Hello and welcome to my video. In this video, I will give you an experiment to do on telepathy to prove to yourself that ESP is a reality. For telepathy, we need 3 basic conditions. One is relationship. Telepathy necessarily requires relationship because it is about upholding and perceiving specific mental information, that is ideas, between 2 people who are known to each other and therefore have some degree of mental entanglement. If the 2 people are closely related, then the distance is not a barrier. And if the 2 people are only trivially related, then they must be in each other's presence to get perception. Telepathy is vastly different to remote viewing, which is about one person perceiving information in the mind about the physical world. The second condition is agreement. You can only perceive information which another person agrees to uphold in mind. So it requires one person selecting and upholding information in the mind for another person to perceive that information in the mind. So it requires agreeing to uphold information in the mind. Now the third condition is attention and focus. The person who is perceiving the ideas that the other person is presenting must be attentive and focused to be aware of those ideas. They have to be mindful. Now, to satisfy the conditions of relationship, agreement, and attention and focus, I suggest that we use a psychic. We are not talking about going to a psychic to get a reading. We are talking about using a psychic to do an experiment. Because there is relationship and there is agreement, the psychic has agreed to do a reading, and there is attention and focus because the psychic is interested in doing a reading. That's what they're going to get paid for. The psychic will be aware of your thoughts. An important matter that I need to mention is that all experiments involving mental perception can easily be tampered with because any ideas that are presented to the subject can be perceived, so may affect the experiment. I will explain how experiments on ESP can be tampered with in the video on the scientific evidence. However, in using a psychic and going there as an ordinary client for a reading, you have an advantage over doing such an experiment with someone else that you know. When I asked another person to do an experiment, I got very mixed results. I found that there were some people who I suspect had deliberately wanted to sabotage the results. Some of them held a materialism-only worldview, so they were very uncomfortable with telepathy. Others were toxic, as I realised later, and these people, apart from being dishonest, are out to hide the key ingredients of foul gameplay, which involves telepathy. It involves the presentation of ideas in the mind to adversely affect the person they seek to victimize. Hence, they seek to deny telepathy. My evidence is that I would present an idea that they were to try and perceive it. They always fail. This was suspect given that they did perceive ideas during conversation when they didn't know and did not expect ideas to be presented to them. And others must have perceived the ideas because they looked at me suspiciously, as I mentioned in the previous video. You might think that telepathy is more likely if the psychics are fakes. But this is not true. All psychics will still be perceiving information in the mental realm, so it doesn't matter if they are fake or genuine. The important thing though is do not tell the psychic about your experiment. They won't be happy with it and they certainly won't comply because they don't want to be caught out in any way. Just go there like anybody else to get a reading. For your experiment, you want to see if the psychic is able to perceive what you are thinking. So you need specific information for your test conditions, and that information to be unique. To get specific information and that's unique, make up a story, but in a specific format, as I will tell you soon. Be sure that you keep it to yourself, secret even from those you trust, so that you can be scientific and you can be 100% certain of your results. The psychic could only have obtained the information through perceiving your thoughts and not by any other means. The other important matter here is that if you do tell somebody else and you don't realize that they are not a friend, that they are an enemy, because most inhumane people will approach you as a friend because they need to be close to you in order to get information and then use it to hurt you. So you can't be sure 100% that a person you know and even trust is actually trustworthy. The problem here is that they may move to obstruct you. They may have an interest in derailing your experiment. All it takes is for someone closely related and not seen as an enemy to pose some serious issue, like for instance a threat, while you are at the reading, to cause you serious mental distraction, to obstruct your experiment. So keep your information, your fake story, and the fact that you're doing an experiment to yourself, secret. To do the experiment scientifically, you first need to do a control experiment. In the control experiment, you will go through the motions of doing everything that you will normally do, but without the test conditions. That means without the fake story. So you will need to go to the psychic twice. The first time before you have made up the story. So there's no possibility of having the fake story on your mind. Try and keep a blank mind, but that is not easy. The psychic will try to gain information from you. You can use this to remain mindful and watch what thoughts might be coming into your mind. But whether any information is obtained from you or not, it doesn't matter. It is still okay as the control experiment because your test conditions are a fake story and you haven't created it yet. After you have done your control, you make up the fake story. But you want your fake story as a flow of ideas and not as a formal narrative where you have an introduction, a main section and a conclusion. To be believable, you can mimic my experience where I had a lot on my mind with any similar experience of your own. So to create the flow of ideas, use the memory of a real story, a real event as a model. Choose some real event which had drama and conflict and where there were unresolved issues so that there could be thoughts and emotions. For instance, you might recall someone that you had known who got sick and died and left some unfinished business behind, and issues that affected you and or others that you care about. Or some bad events at work where there are ongoing or new issues that affect you. Once you have decided on your real story, you need to examine how that story comes to mind as a memory, as a flow of thoughts. To help you in this process, do some automatic writing. As the thoughts arise in your mind, write them down and don't worry about errors. When you think about some changes, write them down as a new thought on the next line. This is about how we remember, how one thought triggers another. Memory is never accurate. If you have a thought of correcting something, and it might be something like, oh yeah, I remember now, it wasn't quite like that, it was like this. Just write it down on the next line as another thought. If the thought is more embellishment, oh yeah, I remember now, there was also this and this and this. Again, write it down on the next line as the next thought. When you have finished, you will have a record of how your thoughts arose and flowed in remembering people and events in your past. It's not a sequential order of events as you would write a story. It's a memory, a flow of ideas. So now that you have your real events as a memory, you can use it as a model for your fake story. You can now write the fake story in the same way, as a flow of ideas. You want to create a fake memory that has drama and conflict. You want to have characters who are emotional. So for example, they may be angry with one another, so that you can imagine having conflict, maybe some anxiety about some issues that would be troubling you if they had really happened. The sort of thinking that says, if only I had done this or that, something different, this wouldn't have happened. For example, let's say you go on a skiing holiday and one of your companions invites you for lunch and you are too busy and you decline, and your friend decides to go skiing instead and he has an accident. So you can be thinking, if only I had gone to lunch with him, then the accident wouldn't have happened. So some fiction to create guilt or anxiety so you can act out emotions while you're at the psychic during the experiment. The emotion you create will help as a cover for two reasons. One reason is that people who go to psychics usually go because they have a problem and are looking for solutions. So they would naturally have emotion. So the psychic would expect some emotions, some expectation. The other reason is that if you can feel worried or anxious, then your thoughts will appear natural. It is not natural thinking about a story with no associated emotion. When I was thinking about the politics at work, I was worried and anxious, and I was angry at some people. Even the very thought of those people coming into mind made me angry. So you want to try and mimic the real thing and avoid being caught out. You don't want the psychic picking up that you're not genuine and then going cold on you and refusing to continue. Be like a good actor. Keep it simple. Have few characters with names that are easy to remember, and use some of the characteristics of the people you know so that it will be easy for you to create fictional characters. Now, describe your fictional characters in some detail in your mind so that you can answer questions about them. So, for instance, are they thin or fat? Do they get angry easily? Are they confident? maybe too confident or not confident enough? Do they like to dress well, or are they carefree in the way that they dress? What sort of car do they drive? Maybe what sort of work do they do? Where do they live? Do they live near you or live in another city? What sort of sports or other activities do they like? And so on. So if someone were to ask you about your fictional character, you would be able to answer them and answer fairly promptly. You want to be able to respond as well as you would if they were real, but of course in broad strokes. If you are asked anything unexpected, your standard response, in your mind of course, I never knew anything about that, never told me anything about that. And this is of course credible because we can never know anybody in detail, even if we know them well. We can't know everything about them. Now you need to rehearse, even in front of a mirror if possible, and read the flow of ideas of the fake story several times. You want to get this as a memory in your mind. And maybe do this 2 or 3 times a week for a week or two. The better you can recall this flow of ideas, the better it is. You want to prepare yourself as you would prepare for the gala opening of a play where you're the lead actor. The acting in this case is a memory, the flow of ideas, which has emotion tied to it, so that it would feel natural to someone else who is interacting with you. Remember, a flow of ideas is very different to reading a story. Your acting is about fictional flow of memory of events, where ideas pop in and out of mind spontaneously, now and then accompanied by emotion, just like an actor. Once you have the story and you have rehearsed it, you are ready to do your experiment. Make an appointment and go to the psychic for the second time. What you want to see is how many of your thoughts is the psychic able to tell you. It is a fake flow of ideas and associated emotions. So if the psychic tells you about what you are thinking, then the only way he or she could have obtained the information is by perceiving what you are thinking. And if the psychic mentally presents you with ideas like name or looks like, as was done to me, then you would be able to respond mentally without effort, because you have created some detail for those characters in mind. So this is then evidence for telepathy. Now, many people who go to get a reading go prepared with pen and paper and record what they are told. I suggest that you also take notes during the reading, both for the control and the experiment, and use this as an opportunity to be mindful and record any ideas that come to your mind, because they are most likely presented to you by the psychic. And this way you have the opportunity of seeing what ideas you perceived during the reading, and then what ideas flowed after them. So were you asked, cunningly asked, prompted to think of something? A word of caution here. It is very, very difficult to be sufficiently perceptive during the actual experiment when you are going to be actively thinking your flow of ideas. Although you don't want that to be artificial. You just want to have it rehearsed enough that it just naturally flows. Even an expert can miss the fleeting perceptions of suggestions made. However, in the control experiment, where you only need to be mindful you have a better chance of perceiving any ideas presented to you. But of course, you will also be writing, so you will have active mental activity. So just bear in mind the difficulty of perceiving an idea aimed to influence you, because it's going to be fleeting, a flash. Thank you for viewing my video. In the next video, I will discuss how telepathy is used in foul gameplay and the danger signs to look out for. What you need to look for to protect yourself. So you can laugh when it comes to foul gameplay. You can beat them every time. And here is a short video of two turkeys escaping from the rain.